So hello students, so in this video we are going to start MEG-05 Block 1 Unit 1 Plato and Literary Criticism. So without any further wait, let's get started from here with the introduction of this video. Plato and Literary Criticism. This unit introduced the ideas of Plato, one of the most influential Greek philosophers, and his approach to art and literature, particularly poetry. Plato's thoughts on literature are primarily found in his works, The Republic and Ion. So now we are going to discuss the Plato's key ideas in literary criticism. Number 1. Mimesis. It's called imitation, and its mean Plato believed that all art is an imitation of reality, called mimesis. Now, according to him, the material world is already an imperfect copy of the true eternal forms. Therefore, art, being a copy of the imperfect world, is twice removed from reality. He criticized poets for creating illusions rather than representing truth. So let's discuss that section number 2 of this video, poetry and truth. Plato was concerned with the descriptive nature of poetry. He argued that poetry appeals to emotions and passions rather than reason the intellect, leading people away from the truth. Now let's discuss the role of poetry in society. Plato believed that poetry had a significant influence on the moral and ethical fabric of society. He feared that poets, through their stories, could corrupt the youth by glorifying immoral behavior such as deceit, violence, and disobedience to the gods. Now let's discuss the section number 4. Section number 4 is poets as divine madmen. So, in Ion, Plato describes poets as inspired individuals who are not creators in their own right but are vessels of divine inspiration. So now let's discuss the 5th section of the video, censorship of art. In The Republic, the Plato advocates for censorship of art and poetry in his ideal state. He suggests that only those works that promote virtue and truth should be allowed, as they align with the rational and moral development of citizens. So now let's discuss the Plato's influence and legacy. In this Plato influence and legacy, Plato's critical stance of the art and literature laid the foundation for debates about the purpose of morality of art. His emphasis on truth and reason influenced subsequent philosophers and critics like Aristotle, who conquered many of Plato's ideas. So now let's discuss the criticism of Plato's views. Aristotle's responses. Aristotle responds that Plato's students disagreed with his teacher's dismissal of poetry. In Poetics, Aristotle defended mimesis as a creative process that reveals universal truths rather than just imitating reality. So it's the point of view of Aristotle's response. So now let's discuss the modern perspectives. In the modern perspectives, modern critics view Plato's approach as overly moralistic and restrictive. Literature and art are now valued for their aesthetic and emotional richness, even if they don't always conform to truth. It is the Aristotle response. Now let's start the discussion points. And the discussion points are: do you agree with Plato's view that art is destructive and potentially harmful? Can art serve both moral and aesthetic purposes, or must it choose one? Plato and his ideas on poetry, a story of truth, imitation, and the ideal world. So now let's discuss the Plato and his ideas on poetry, a story of truth, imitation, and the ideal world. Let's take a journey back to ancient Greece. Around 400 BCE, imagine a grand city of marble temples and busy marketplaces, where philosophers gathered to debate life's biggest questions. Among them is Plato's, one of the most respected thinkers of his time. Plato is not just a philosopher, he is a man searching for truth and justice in everything, including art and poetry. So now let's discuss the Cave of Shadow, a story of illusion. One day, Plato tells a story to explain how he sees the world. Imagine a dark cave where prisoners have been chained since birth. They can only see the wall in front of them. Behind them, a fire burns, casting shadows on the wall. People outside the cave walk by with objects, and the fire's light creates moving shadows. To the prisoners, those shadows are the only reality they know. They don't realize that what they see are just imitation of real things. They believe the shadows are real because they have never seen the actual world outside the cave. This, Plato says, is how we experience the world. We think we understand reality, but we often just looking at shadows of the truth. The real world, with its perfect and eternal forms, exists beyond what we can normally see. So now let's discuss the problem with poets. Now let's apply this story to the art of poetry. Plato believes that poetry and artists are like the people casting shadows in the cave. When poets write stories or create art, they are imitating the imperfect world around them. They don't show us the true, ideal forms. Instead, They give us versions that are even further removed from reality. For example, think of the painting of a tree. Plato would say the tree in the painting is an imitation of the real tree, but even the real tree is just an imperfect copy of the perfect idea of a tree that exists in the ideal world. So the painting is twice removed from the truth. Now let's discuss why Plato destructed poetry. Plato worries that poetry and art can be misleading because they appeal to our emotions, not our sense of reason. Let's imagine a poet telling a story about a great hero who cheats and lies to win a battle. The story is exciting and people feel inspired by the hero's bravery. But Plato fears that such stories might teach people the wrong lessons, that lying and cheating are acceptable. He believes that poetry can influence people, especially young minds, in dangerous ways. Instead of encouraging truth and goodness, it might lead them down to the wrong path. So now let's discuss the poet as a divine madman. In another story, Plato talks about poets being like people who are possessed by the gods. They don't really know what they are saying or what they say it. They are just vessels for some divine inspiration. Imagine a poet who writes beautiful verses about love and war but can't explain the meaning behind their own words. To Plato, this makes poets unreliable when it comes to the teaching truth. Now let's discuss the censorship in Plato's ideal world. Because of these concerns, Plato suggests that in his perfect society, a place where everything is just and fair, poetry should be carefully controlled. He believes only stories that promotes goodness, courage, and truth should be allowed. If a poem or play teaches bad morals or false ideals, it should be banned. Imagine a city where children only hear stories that make them wise and kind, never stories that might confuse or mislead them. That's the kind of world Plato's inventions. So now we are going to discuss on the Plato's legacy and debate. Plato's ideas sparked a debate that continues even today. His students Aristotle disagreed with him. Aristotle believed that poetry and art are not just imitations but ways to understand deeper truth about human life. He argued that even tragic stories where things go wrong can teach us important lessons. In the modern world, many people see art and literature as valuable when they saw things that are not perfect. Art can make us feel, reflect, and understand life in ways that reason alone cannot. So now let's discuss the moral of the story. And the moral of the story is Plato's views remind us to be critical of what we see and read. Not everything that entertains us leads to truth. But at the same time, banning all forms of imaginating art could mean losing out on creativity, emotion, and the richness of human experience. So, the next time you read a poem, watch a movie, or look at a painting, ask yourself, what truth is it showing me? What shadows might it be casting? And most importantly, remember that sometimes even shadow can help us see the light. So we are in the end. If you found this video helpful, please like, comment and share this video with your partners. I'll see you in the next video. Take care, bye bye and Jai Hind.